I spent my daughter's birthday money on myself to pay bills after she blew her college fund on her unemployed boyfriend. 3 months ago, my daughter Whitney came home and told me she withdrew her entire college fund, $47,000. Gone. She said her boyfriend Brett needed it to start a business. Brett had been living in our basement for 8 months without paying rent or working. The business was supposed to be a car detailing service, but he never actually registered anything or bought equipment. He just took the money. I asked Whitney if she got any paperwork or contracts. She said Brett promised to pay her back double within a year. I told her that was insane. She screamed at me that I never supported her relationships and stormed out. She moved in with Brett at his mom's place that same night. For weeks I called her. She ignored every message. Finally, she answered once and said Brett was working on the business plan. I asked to see it. She hung up. 2 weeks after that, his mom kicked them both out because Brett still wasn't working and they ate all her food. They moved into a cheap apartment across town that Whitney paid for with her waitressing money. I didn't hear from her again until last Tuesday. She called crying, saying their power got shut off because Brett spent the electricity money on a new gaming console. She needed $200 to turn it back on. I said no. She called me selfish and said real mothers help their daughters. I told her real daughters don't steal their future for unemployed boyfriends. She hung up. Whitney's birthday was coming up on Saturday. I had been saving $800 for months to throw her a party at her favorite restaurant and buy her the laptop she wanted for her graphic design classes. The money was sitting in an envelope in my desk drawer labeled Whitney Birthday Fund. Thursday morning, I got a shut-off notice for our electric bill. $300 overdue. Then the water company called. Another $180. My hours got cut at work last month and I had been barely scraping by. I opened the fridge and saw we were down to mustard and half a carton of eggs. Grocery money was gone too. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at that birthday envelope. I opened it and counted the cash. $800. Exactly. I could pay the electric bill, the water bill, buy 2 weeks of groceries, and still have money left for gas. Or I could keep it for Whitney's birthday and sit in the dark eating nothing. I thought about her screaming at me in Brett's defense. I thought about the $47,000 he convinced her to hand over. I thought about how she called me selfish for not paying her electric bill when she chose to light her college money on fire. I took the birthday money, paid the bills, bought groceries, put gas in my car. When Saturday came, I texted Whitney, happy birthday with a card emoji. She responded asking what time to show up for her party. I told her there was no party this year. She called me immediately. Where's my party? She yelled. You promised we'd go to Romano's and I'd get my laptop. I stayed quiet. She kept screaming. You're such a terrible mother. I can't believe you'd ruin my birthday like this. Brett's mom even said she'd come and now I have to tell everyone it's canceled. I finally spoke. I used your birthday money to pay my bills. The line went dead silent. Then she whispered, You what? I repeated it. She started crying and yelling at the same time, saying I stole from her and she'd never forgive me. I told her the money was mine and I could spend it however I wanted, just like she spent her college fund however she wanted. Whitney said she was coming over to talk in person. I told her not to. She said she was already in Brett's car and they'd be here in 20 minutes. I heard Brett in the background telling her to calm down. I locked my front door and stood in my hallway. Brett's car screeched to a stop outside. Whitney got out, but Brett grabbed her purse and started going through it. He pulled out her wallet, her phone, her keys. She tried to grab them back and he shoved her so hard she hit the pavement. I watched my daughter struggle to stand while Brett calmly walked to my mailbox and started rifling through my mail. He found my bank statement, ripped it open, and his face twisted into something ugly. He looked at my house and then at Whitney still on the ground, and I saw him make a decision that turned my legs to water. Brett started walking toward my front door with my bank statement crumpled in his fist. His eyes were locked on the house like he was doing calculations in his head. I could see his lips moving. He glanced back at Whitney, who was still trying to get up from the driveway, and I swear he smiled. I backed away from the window. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely get my phone out of my pocket. I dialed 911 but didn't hit call yet, just held my thumb over the button. The pounding started 3 seconds later. Open the door, he shouted. We need to talk about finances. I didn't answer. I didn't move. I barely breathed. Whitney? His voice dropped to something sweet and sickening. Baby, tell your mom to open the door. We just want to have a conversation about the money she owes us. The money I owed them. That's when I knew exactly what kind of person my daughter had attached herself to. I heard Whitney's voice, weaker than I'd ever heard it. Brett, maybe we should just go. She's not going to let us in. I watched through the side window as Brett turned on her. He grabbed her arm and yanked her close. His mouth was right against her ear, but I could still hear every word through the thin walls of my old house. You're going to get that door open, he said. Your mom has money in the bank. I saw it. She's been holding out on us this whole time while we've been struggling. My bank statement showed my savings account balance. $3,400. The last of my emergency fund. Money I'd been protecting for years in case something happened. Something like losing my job entirely or needing car repairs or having a medical emergency. Brett saw that number and decided it belonged to him. Mom. Whitney's voice cracked. Please just let us in. Brett just wants to talk. I pressed call on my phone. 911? What's your emergency? There's a man trying to break into my house. He already assaulted someone in my driveway and now he's trying to get through my front door. Brett must have heard me because the pounding stopped. I heard him curse, then the sound of feet on gravel. Through the window, I watched him drag Whitney back to his car. She was crying and trying to pull away from him, but he was twice her size. The police arrived 11 minutes later. Brett's car was gone. Whitney's phone was still on my driveway where it must have fallen during the struggle. I picked it up and handed it to the officer. "Do you want to file a report?" he asked. I looked at my daughter's phone in his hand. The screen was cracked down the middle. There was a photo of her and Brett as the lock screen background. They were at some beach, smiling. She looked happy in that photo. Young and stupid and happy. "Yes," I said. "I want to file a report." The officer took down everything. The shove that knocked Whitney down. Brett going through my mail. The threatening behavior at my door. He asked if I knew where they lived, and I gave him the apartment address. Whitney had texted me weeks ago when she was trying to guilt me into helping with her power bill. "Ma'am," he said before leaving, "if he comes back, don't engage. Just call us immediately." After they left, I sat in my kitchen for 3 hours. Just sat there staring at Whitney's cracked phone. I couldn't bring myself to try to unlock it. I didn't want to see what was on there. Around midnight, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Mom." Whitney's voice was barely a whisper. "Brett's asleep. I borrowed his friend's phone. Are you okay?" She didn't answer my question. "Why did you call the police on us?" "I didn't call the police on you. I called the police on him. He pushed you to the ground. He tried to break into my house. He went through my mail. He was just upset." She was making excuses already. "You embarrassed him by saying there was no party. He thought we were going to Romano's." "Whitney." I kept my voice as steady as I could. "He saw my bank statement and decided he wanted my money. That's not being upset. That's robbery. You don't understand him." "I understand him perfectly." She went quiet. In the background, I could hear someone snoring. Brett, probably. Sleeping soundly while my daughter risked sneaking a phone call to the mother she'd been screaming at just hours before. "Mom." Her voice cracked. "I don't know what to do. Come home." "I can't." "Why not?" "He has my wallet, my keys. My car is at your house. I don't have any money." "I'll come get you." "Tell me where you are." Silence. Then a rustling sound. Then Brett's voice, groggy and irritated. The line went dead. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by my front door holding my phone and waiting for her to call back. She didn't. Sunday morning, I drove to their apartment complex. It was a run-down place on the east side of town. 3 stories of faded brown paint and rusty railings. I found Whitney's car in the parking lot. It was still there. She hadn't been lying about not having her keys. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, working up the courage to go knock on their door. I had no idea which apartment was theirs. The address Whitney gave me just had the building number. I was about to get out when I saw Brett's car pull into the lot. He parked next to Whitney's car and got out alone. No Whitney. He was carrying grocery bags and whistling like he didn't have a care in the world. Like he hadn't knocked my daughter to the ground less than 24 hours ago. I sank down in my seat and watched him walk into the building. He went to Unit 2B on the 2nd floor. I made a note of it and waited another 10 minutes before driving home. Monday morning, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Brett, hand-delivered to my mailbox. I knew because there was no stamp. He'd written a full page in cramped handwriting about how I owed him money for pain and suffering. How Whitney told him I had savings that I was selfishly hoarding. How a real mother would help her daughter and her daughter's partner build a life together. He said if I gave them $1,500, he would forgive the incident on Saturday and we could start fresh as a family. At the bottom of the letter, he'd written his Venmo username. I took photos of the letter and added them to my file. Then I called the police again. A different officer came this time. Younger. He read the letter and raised his eyebrows. "This is basically extortion," he said. "You could pursue charges." I looked at him. "If I pursue charges against him, what happens to my daughter?" He paused. "Depends on her involvement. Did she write any of this letter?" "No. That's his handwriting. She probably doesn't even know he sent it." The officer nodded slowly. "Look, I'll be honest with you. We see situations like this a lot. Young women getting caught up with controlling men. It rarely ends well unless the woman decides to leave on her own. And if she doesn't decide that, then you have to protect yourself first. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved." I hated that answer. I hated it because I knew he was right. Wednesday came and I hadn't heard from Whitney since that midnight phone call. I kept her cracked phone on my kitchen table. The battery had died on Sunday and I didn't have the right charger for it. I was making dinner when someone knocked on my front door. My whole body tensed up. I grabbed my phone and walked quietly to the window. It wasn't Brett. It was a woman I didn't recognize. Mid-50s maybe. Gray hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked tired and angry. I opened the door a crack, keeping the chain on. "Are you Linda?" The woman's voice was sharp. "Who's asking?" "I'm Doreen, Brett's mother. And I need to talk to you about your daughter." I stared at her. Brett's mother. The woman who had kicked them both out of her house weeks ago. I unlatched the chain and opened the door wider. "Come in," I said. Doreen sat at my kitchen table and accepted a cup of coffee she didn't drink. Her hands were shaking almost as bad as mine had been on Saturday. "I need to apologize," she started. "I had no idea he was like this. I mean, I knew he was lazy. I knew he didn't work. But I didn't know he was violent until I saw the police report." "You saw the police report?" "My brother's a cop in the next town over. He pulled up the file when I told him what happened." "What exactly did you hear happened?" Doreen set down her coffee cup. "Everything. The shove, the mail tampering, the attempted break-in, that letter he sent you. I didn't file a report about the letter." She looked at me. "Maybe you should." "I know." Doreen took a deep breath. "Brett has always been difficult. His father left when he was 12 and I think something broke in him. He blames everyone else for his problems. never takes responsibility. But I never thought he would hurt someone. He didn't just hurt someone. He hurt my daughter. I know. Doreen's eyes filled with tears. And I'm so sorry. If I had kicked them out sooner, maybe none of this would have happened. If you had kicked them out sooner, Whitney would have just gone somewhere else with him. This isn't your fault. We sat in silence for a minute. The coffee grew cold. Do you know where they are right now? I asked. Still at that apartment? But Brett's been talking about leaving town. Moving somewhere fresh. Starting over. With Whitney? Doreen nodded. She overheard him on the phone with one of his friends. Something about Arizona. A job opportunity. Brett doesn't work. He says this one's different. Some guy he knows out there who owes him a favor. I felt my stomach drop. Arizona. Across the country from me. From everyone Whitney knew. From any support system that might help her escape. When are they leaving? Doreen shook her head. I don't know. Soon, I think. He was talking about selling her car for gas money. Selling her car? He's got her convinced they're a team. What's hers is his. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. I need to stop this. Linda. Doreen's voice stopped me. Be careful. He doesn't like being challenged. And when he doesn't get what he wants, he gets dangerous. I looked at this woman who had raised a monster and spent years making excuses for him. She was trying to help now, but it was too little too late. Her warnings meant nothing when she let this happen in the first place. I'll be careful, I said. But I'm not going to let him take my daughter across the country. Doreen left a few minutes later. She gave me her phone number and told me to call if I needed anything. I didn't think I would call, but I saved the number anyway. That night I made a plan. Thursday morning, I called in sick to work and drove to the apartment complex again. I parked where I could see Unit 2B, but they couldn't easily see me. I waited. At 9:15, Whitney came out alone. She was wearing sweatpants and a hoodie, even though it was 70 degrees out. Her hair was unwashed and pulled back. She looked smaller than I remembered, like she was shrinking. She walked to her car and got in the driver's side. I watched her sit there for a long time, without starting the engine. She was probably looking for her keys and remembering Brett had them. I got out of my car. Whitney saw me coming and her whole face changed. First surprise, then something like hope, then fear. She glanced back at the apartment building. Mom. Her voice was a harsh whisper. You can't be here. I stopped at her car door. Honey, come home. Please. I can't. He doesn't love you. You know that, right? He loves what you can give him. She flinched like I'd hit her. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. Whitney's eyes darted to the building again. If he sees you here, he'll lose it. So let him lose it. Come with me right now. We'll get in my car and drive away and you never have to see him again. She shook her head. I can't leave him. Why not? Because I have nothing without him. I felt those words like a knife in my chest. This was what he'd done to her. Made her feel worthless. Made her believe she had no options. Made her dependent on him in every possible way. That's not true, I said. You have me. Family that spent my birthday money on bills instead of me. I spent that money because I had no other choice. Because you gave $47,000 to a man who has given you nothing but pain. Whitney's face crumpled. She started crying. Silent tears rolling down her cheeks while she gripped the steering wheel of a car she couldn't even drive. Mom. Her voice broke. I think I made a mistake. I know you did. That's okay. People make mistakes. But you can fix this one. She looked at the building one more time. Her hand moved toward the door handle. Whitney. Brett's voice rang out across the parking lot. He was standing on the second floor, landing outside their apartment door. Shirtless. Barefoot. Looking down at us like a king surveying his kingdom. What are you doing? His voice carried the threat without him having to raise it. Whitney's hand dropped from the door handle. She couldn't look at me. Go away, she whispered. Please, Mom. Just go. I stood there for another 5 seconds watching my daughter disappear behind a wall I couldn't break through. Then I turned and walked back to my car. Brett didn't come down. He just stood there watching me leave, making sure I knew he'd won this round. But I wasn't done fighting. I spent the rest of Thursday making phone calls. First to a domestic violence hotline. They gave me resources and advice and told me to document everything. Keep records. Take photos. Build a case in case Whitney ever decided to press charges. Then I called a lawyer. A woman named Patricia who specialized in family matters. She listened to my story and told me something that changed everything. If Brett tries to take Whitney across state lines against her will, that could be considered kidnapping, she said. Especially if she's financially dependent on him and he's controlling her access to money and transportation. But how do I prove it's against her will if she goes with him voluntarily? Patricia paused. That's the tricky part. She has to be the one to say she doesn't want to go. Otherwise, it's just two adults making a decision to relocate. What if she's scared to say it? What if he's threatened her? Then we need evidence of that threat. I didn't have evidence. I had a letter demanding money and a witness statement from Doreen about overhearing plans to leave. I had my own observations of Whitney's fear, but none of that proved she was being held against her will. I spent Friday gathering what I could. I went back through every text Whitney had sent me over the past 3 months. The ones asking for money. The ones making excuses for Brett. The one where she told me about giving him her college fund. One message stood out. She'd sent it at 3 in the morning 2 weeks after moving in with Brett. Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning and he's the only one with a life jacket. I know that doesn't make sense. Forget I said anything. I hadn't responded to that message. I'd been too angry about the college fund. Too hurt by her screaming at me. I read it again now and wanted to go back in time and shake my past self. She'd been asking for help. and I'd ignored her. Saturday morning, 1 week since the incident at my house. I woke up to a notification on my phone. Whitney had posted something on Instagram, her first post in months. It was a photo of her and Brett standing in front of a Welcome to Arizona sign. The caption read, "New beginnings." They'd left. While I was building my case and making my phone calls and waiting for the right moment to intervene, they'd packed up and driven halfway across the country. I sat on my bed staring at that photo for a long time. Whitney was smiling, but it didn't reach her eyes. Brett had his arm around her shoulders, and it looked less like an embrace and more like a chain. I'd lost her. The next 3 weeks were the worst of my life. I called Whitney every day. Sometimes, she answered. Usually, she didn't. When she did answer, she sounded far away. Distant. Like she was reading from a script Brett had written for her. "Everything's fine, Mom. Brett's job is going great. We found a nice apartment. Stop worrying." I asked her for the address. She said Brett didn't want anyone knowing where they lived right now, just until they got settled. I asked her to send me photos of the apartment. She said she would, but never did. I asked her if she was happy. She paused for so long I thought the call had dropped. "I'm fine, Mom. That's not what I asked." She hung up. I contacted the Arizona police. Explained the situation. They were sympathetic but told me the same thing everyone else had. Without evidence of a crime, they couldn't do anything. Whitney was an adult making her own choices. I hired a private investigator. Cost me half my savings, but I didn't care. His name was Gene, and he found their apartment in Phoenix within 4 days. A place in a rough neighborhood. Second floor of a complex that looked like it hadn't been updated since 1985. Gene took photos from outside. Whitney's car was there with Arizona plates now. Brett must have handled the registration somehow. Gene saw Whitney leave the apartment once during his 3 days of surveillance. She walked to a grocery store 2 blocks away and came back with 1 bag. She looked thinner than before. Brett never left the apartment while Gene was watching. I flew to Phoenix. Gene had given me the address and offered to come with me, but I said no. This was something I needed to do alone. I rented a car at the airport and drove straight to their apartment complex. It was even worse in person than in the photos. Broken windows, overflowing dumpsters, a group of men drinking in the parking lot at 2 in the afternoon. I sat in my rental car and called Whitney. "Hi, Mom. I'm outside your apartment." Silence. "What?" "I flew to Phoenix. I'm in the parking lot right now. Please come down and talk to me." "Mom, you can't be here." Her voice shifted to panic. "Brett's gonna flip out if he sees you. Then come down before he sees me. We can go get coffee. Talk for an hour." "I don't think that's a good idea." "Whitney." I took a deep breath. "I haven't seen you in almost a month. I flew across the country to see my daughter. Please just give me an hour." Another long silence. I could hear her breathing. Could hear her trying to decide. "Okay," she finally said. "There's a Starbucks on the corner of 7th and Camelback. Meet me there in 20 minutes. She hung up before I could respond. I drove to the Starbucks and waited. 20 minutes passed. 30. 45. She wasn't coming. I was about to call her again when I saw Brett's car pull into the parking lot. My whole body went cold. He got out alone. Walked into the Starbucks with the same casual confidence I'd seen in my driveway weeks ago. He ordered something and sat down at a table near the window where he could see my rental car. He was watching me. I stayed in my car and texted Whitney. "Where are you?" No response. "Is Brett with you?" 3 dots appeared. Then stopped. Then nothing. Brett finished his coffee and walked back to his car. Before he got in, he looked directly at my rental and smiled. Then, he drove away. I sat there for another hour. Whitney never showed up. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. "Leave Arizona. Go back home. Whitney doesn't want you here. If you contact her again or come to our apartment, I'll get a restraining order." It was from Brett's phone. I called Whitney immediately. "The number you are trying to reach is no longer in service." He'd cut off her phone. I drove to their apartment at midnight. The lights were off. I sat in the parking lot until 3 in the morning hoping to see some sign of her. Movement in the window. Something. Nothing. The next morning, I went to the Phoenix police station and filed a missing persons report. The officer who took my statement was kind but not helpful. "Ma'am, your daughter isn't missing," he said. "You know where she is. You've seen her recently. She's chosen not to communicate with you. She didn't choose. Her boyfriend cut off her phone. That's still not a crime. Adults can change their phone numbers. He's controlling her, isolating her. This is textbook domestic abuse." The officer sighed. "I understand how this looks to you, but without her cooperation, there's very little we can do." "Has she ever made a statement to police about abuse? Filed any reports?" "She filed a statement about the incident in my driveway back home." He typed something into his computer. "I see it. A battery report. But it looks like she declined to press charges. Because he has her convinced they're a team. Because she's scared of him." "Ma'am." The officer looked at me with something like pity. "I'm sorry. I really am. But our hands are tied here." I flew home 2 days later. I'd accomplished nothing except confirming that my daughter was trapped with a monster and there was nothing I could do about it. Back home, I fell apart. I stopped going to work. Used up all my sick days and then started using vacation time. I barely ate, barely slept. I just sat by my phone waiting for Whitney to call. She didn't call. My friend Marlena came over after I stopped answering her texts. She found me on my couch in the same clothes I'd been wearing for 3 days, staring at nothing. "Linda." She sat down next to me. "You have to get up." "I can't." "You can. You have to. My daughter is gone. She's not dead. She's in Arizona. She's alive. She might as well be dead. I looked at Marlena with eyes that had cried themselves dry. I can't reach her. I can't help her. I can't do anything. Marlena made me shower and change and eat something. She sat with me while I told her everything. The college fund, the birthday money, the incident in my driveway, the trip to Phoenix. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. What do you want to do? She finally asked. I want to get my daughter back. Then that's what we're going to do. Marlena was a former social worker. She'd spent 20 years dealing with situations like this. She made some phone calls and came back with a plan. We're going to build a file, she said. Everything you have. Every text, every photo, every police report, every piece of evidence that Brett is dangerous. And then we're going to wait. Wait for what? For Whitney to ask for help. Because she will eventually. They always do. And when she does, you need to be ready to move fast. So I waited. I went back to work. Forced myself to function. Kept my phone charged and on at all times. Checked Whitney's Instagram every day, even though she never posted after that Arizona photo. 1 month passed. Then 2. On the 3rd month, something happened. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Phoenix area code. Hello? Is this Linda? Whitney's mom? It was a woman's voice. Young. Nervous. Yes. Who is this? My name is Crystal. I work at the diner where Whitney just got a job. She asked me to call you. My heart stopped. Is she okay? Crystal paused. She wants to come home, but she says she can't leave. I don't really understand what's going on, but she's scared. She cries in the bathroom during her breaks. Where is she right now? At the diner. We're on shift for another 2 hours. She's not supposed to have her phone. He takes it when she goes to work. He takes her phone? Yeah. She borrows mine sometimes to check stuff, but she's scared he'll find out. I was already grabbing my car keys. What's the address of the diner? Crystal gave it to me. I wrote it down with shaking hands. I'll be there as soon as I can, I said. Don't let her leave with him. Keep her there. Lady, I can't. Crystal sounded scared herself. I don't want to get involved in whatever this is. Please? I was begging now. Just keep her at the diner until I get there. Tell her to stay. Tell her I'm coming. I'll try. The line went dead. I booked a flight while driving to the airport. The next one to Phoenix was in 3 hours. I bought the ticket and sat in the terminal, shaking. This was it. This was my chance. I landed in Phoenix at 10:30 that night. The diner was closed. I drove there anyway and found it dark. No sign of Whitney. I called Crystal's number. No answer. I called it again. And again. Finally, she picked up. Crystal, it's Linda. Where's Whitney? She left. Crystal sounded upset. He showed up right after my shift ended. I tried to tell her to stay, but she saw his car and just walked out. Did she say anything before she left? Yeah. Crystal's voice dropped. She said to tell you she's sorry, and that she loves you. And, Crystal paused, and that she needs more time. More time for what? I don't know. I'm sorry. I have to go. The line went dead. I drove to their apartment even though I knew it was useless. The lights were off, no movement, no sign of life. I sat in that parking lot until the sun came up. Around 7 in the morning, I saw Whitney leave the apartment alone. She was in her diner uniform, heading to the morning shift. She saw my rental car, stopped, looked at me through the windshield. I got out of the car. Whitney. Just that one word, her name. The most important word I'd ever spoken. She didn't run to me, didn't run away, just stood there in the Arizona morning heat looking at me like I was a ghost. I walked toward her slowly, like approaching a scared animal. I'm here, I said. I'm not leaving until you come with me. Mom. Her voice cracked. You don't understand. Then help me understand. She looked back at the apartment, at the closed door, at whatever was waiting for her behind it. He'll kill me if I leave. I stopped walking. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? He said if I ever try to leave, he'll kill me. And you. And anyone who helps me. Whitney. I forced myself to stay calm. Has he hurt you? She didn't answer. But she didn't have to. The way she flinched when I asked told me everything. We're going to the police, I said. Right now. No. She backed away. I can't. You don't understand what he'll do. Whitney, listen to me. I closed the distance between us and grabbed her hands. They were so thin. When had she gotten so thin? He can't hurt you if you're not with him. We'll go to the police. We'll get a restraining order. We'll fly home today. He won't be able to touch you. She was shaking, tears streaming down her face. I have no money. He takes everything I make at the diner. I have nothing. I have money. I have a plane ticket. I have everything you need. Just come with me. Right now. Don't go back inside. Don't get anything. Just come. Whitney looked at the apartment one more time. Then she looked at me. Okay, she whispered. We got in my rental car and drove away. I didn't take her to the police station first. I drove straight to the airport. We could file reports later. From home, where she was safe. Whitney didn't talk during the drive. She just sat in the passenger seat staring straight ahead like she was in shock, which she probably was. At the airport, I returned the rental car and walked her to the terminal. Security, the gate, the plane. She fell asleep as soon as we took off, collapsed against my shoulder like she hadn't slept in months, which she probably hadn't. I sat there for 3 hours watching my daughter sleep and promising myself I would never let anyone hurt her again. We landed at home at 4 in the afternoon. I'd arranged for Marlena to pick us up since my car was still at the airport from my original flight. Marlena took one look at Whitney and her face went pale. My God, she whispered to me while Whitney was getting her bag. What did he do to her? I don't know yet. She hasn't really talked. She needs a doctor. And a therapist. And probably a lawyer. I know. One thing at a time. I took Whitney home. Made her a sandwich she barely touched. Set her up in her old bedroom that I'd kept exactly the same since she left. She stood in the doorway looking at her room like she'd never seen it before. This is still mine? Of course it is. It was always yours. She sat on the bed and started crying. Deep sobs that shook her whole body. I sat next to her and held her and let her cry until she couldn't anymore. That night she told me some of what had happened. Not all of it. She wasn't ready for that. But enough. Brett had controlled everything. Her money, her phone, her car. He'd convinced her that no one else cared about her, that her family had abandoned her, that he was the only one who would ever love her. When she tried to argue, he hit her. When she tried to leave, he threatened to kill her. When she cried, he told her she was pathetic and weak. The $47,000 was gone. He'd spent it on drugs and gambling and things she never even saw. The business never existed. It was always just a way to get her money. I listened to all of it without interrupting, without judging, without saying I told you so. When she finished, I held her face in my hands and looked her in the eyes. None of this was your fault, I said. You were targeted by a predator. He saw your kindness and your trust and he used it against you. That's on him, not you. But the money. Money can be replaced. You can't. She started crying again. The next week was a blur of appointments. Doctor, therapist, lawyer. Whitney filed a full report about everything Brett had done. The abuse, the threats, the financial control. The police in Arizona opened an investigation. We got a restraining order. We changed Whitney's phone number and email, and all her passwords. We locked down her social media. We did everything we could to make her invisible to him. But Brett didn't give up that easily. 2 weeks after we got back, he showed up at my house. I was at work. Whitney was home alone. She called me hyperventilating. He's here. He's outside. He's pounding on the door. Don't open it. I was already grabbing my keys. Call 911. I'm on my way. The police got there before I did. Brett was still in my driveway screaming about how Whitney belonged to him, how she was his and no one was going to take her away. They arrested him on the spot. Violation of the restraining order. He also had drugs in his car and an unregistered weapon. He went to jail that night. The Arizona charges, combined with the new charges, meant he was looking at real time. His public defender tried to negotiate, but the prosecutor wasn't interested. Brett pleaded guilty to a reduced set of charges. He got 3 years in prison. Whitney cried when she heard the verdict. I thought they were tears of relief, but when I asked her, she said something that broke my heart. Part of me still loves him. I know, I said. That's how abuse works. It takes time for those feelings to fade. Will they ever go away completely? Eventually. But you have to do the work. Therapy. Self-care. Building a new life. She nodded slowly. I'm going to try. That was a year ago. Whitney is different now. Stronger. She started community college last fall, taking graphic design classes like she always wanted. She works part-time at a coffee shop and is saving money for her own apartment. She still has bad days. Days when she flinches at loud noises. Days when she can't get out of bed. Days when the trauma catches up with her. But she's healing. We both are. The $47,000 is gone forever. That still stings sometimes, but I've made peace with it. It was the price of a lesson no one should have to learn. A few months ago, Whitney came to me with an envelope. Inside was $800. What's this? I asked. Your birthday money. She smiled. I know I can't replace what you lost, but I wanted to start somewhere. I tried to give it back. She refused. You spent that money on bills because of me, she said. Because I made a terrible choice and left you struggling. Let me do this. Please. I took the money. Not because I needed it, because she needed to give it. That night we went to Romano's for dinner. Just the two of us. We ordered too much food and laughed at old memories and didn't talk about Brett at all. On the way home, Whitney reached over and grabbed my hand. Thank you, she said, for not giving up on me. I squeezed her hand back. That's what mothers do. She smiled. And for the first time in a long time, it reached her eyes. Update. It's been 6 months since I wrote this original post and a lot has happened. I wasn't planning on sharing more, but people have been asking and honestly, I think it helps to write it out. Brett got out of prison early. Good behavior, apparently. 3 years turned into 18 months. I found out through Doreen, his mother, who called me the day he was released. I thought you should know, she said. Her voice was shaky. I don't know where he's going, but he's been making calls, asking people about Whitney. Thank you for telling me. Linda. Doreen paused. Be careful. He's worse now. Prison changed him. I hung up and immediately called Whitney. She was at school. Don't panic. I started. He's out. Her voice was flat. I know. I have an alert set up. Of course she did. She'd been tracking his status obsessively. Part of her healing process was staying informed, knowing where the threat was at all times. What do we do? I asked. We stay alert. She sounded calmer than I felt. The restraining order is still active. If he comes within 500 feet of either of us, he goes right back to jail. And if he doesn't care about going back to jail, then we handle it. 2 weeks passed without incident. Then 3. I started to relax a little. Maybe he'd moved on, found some other vulnerable person to prey on. Then one night I came home from work and found something on my doorstep. An envelope with no name on it. Inside was a single sheet of paper with one sentence typed in the middle. "This isn't over." I called the police. They took the letter, dusted for prints, found nothing. Brett had covered his tracks. The next day, Whitney got a letter too. Same envelope, same typed message. "I'll wait forever." We went to the police again. They contacted Brett's parole officer. He claimed he'd been at his halfway house all week, had witnesses, couldn't have sent any letters. Someone else must have sent them, the officer told us. Someone he knows. So he has people doing his dirty work? Looks like it. Can't you do something? Without evidence linking him directly, our hands are tied. I was so tired of hearing that. Marlena helped us install security cameras, new locks, motion sensor lights. We turned my house into a fortress. Whitney started sleeping with a baseball bat next to her bed. She'd never been a violent person, but survival changes you. The letters stopped after the second one, but the feeling of being watched didn't. Whitney started noticing cars driving slowly past the house, unfamiliar faces at the coffee shop where she worked, a man who sat in the parking lot of her school for 3 days straight. The police couldn't prove any of it was connected to Brett. Then Crystal called. You remember Crystal? The girl from the diner in Phoenix who first contacted me about Whitney. She sounded scared. "Someone's been asking about you," she said to Whitney. "A guy came into the diner yesterday with a photo. He wanted to know where you went." "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. I said I didn't know you." But he didn't believe me. He said he'd be back. "What did he look like?" "Tall, skinny, tattoos on his neck, shaved head." Whitney went pale. "That's Brett's cousin, Maddox. He's worse than Brett." We filed another police report, added Maddox's name to our file, started varying our routines, taking different routes to work and school, never going anywhere alone. It was exhausting, living in constant fear, looking over our shoulders every second of every day. Then Brett made a mistake. He sent a text message to Whitney's old phone number, the one we deactivated months ago. But when we canceled the number, it had been reassigned to someone else. Some teenager who saw the message and thought it was weird enough to report. The message said, "I know where you sleep." The teenager's father called the police. They traced the message back to Brett's phone. His parole officer picked him up that same day. Back to prison. Another 2 years added to his sentence for violating the restraining order and witness intimidation. I wish I could say that was the end of it. But Brett's cousin Maddox is still out there. And there are others. A whole network of people who share Brett's views on women and relationships and control. Whitney testified at Brett's second trial. She stood up in front of a courtroom and told her story. Every detail, every scar, every nightmare. It was the bravest thing I've ever seen. The prosecutor used her testimony to push for the maximum sentence. Brett will be in prison for at least 4 more years now. And when he gets out there, will be another restraining order waiting. Whitney graduated from community college last month, top of her class in graphic design. She got a job at a marketing firm downtown. Entry level, but she doesn't care. It's hers. She earned it. She moved into her own apartment 2 weeks ago. A small place, but safe. Good neighborhood. Nice neighbors. Security system that Marlena helped her set up. The day she moved in, I helped her hang curtains. We stood there, looking out the window at her new view, and she started crying. "I never thought I'd have this," she said. "Have what?" "A life. A real life. That's actually mine." I hugged her, held her tight. "You always had the strength for this," I said. "He just convinced you that you didn't." She pulled back and looked at me. "Do you remember what you said to me when you showed up in Arizona that last time? When you told me you weren't leaving without me?" I nodded. "That's the moment I knew," she said. "That's the moment I realized he was lying. That people did care about me. That I wasn't worthless. That I had something worth fighting for." "What changed your mind?" She smiled through her tears. "You flew across the country twice for me. You spent your savings on investigators and lawyers. You gave up everything to get me back." She paused. "Nobody does that for someone worthless." I touched her face. The face I'd watched grow from a baby to a child to a teenager to a woman. A face that had seen too much pain but was finally starting to heal. "You were never worthless," I said. "Not for 1 second of your life." That was 2 months ago. This morning I got a text from Whitney. "Guess what? I just put $500 in my savings account. First time I've ever had savings. Can't believe I used to let him take everything." I texted back with a heart emoji. Then I sat at my kitchen table and cried. Good tears this time. Tears of relief and pride and hope. My daughter is going to be okay. It took losing everything for her to find herself. It took hitting rock bottom for her to start climbing back up. It took years of pain and fear and doubt. But she made it, and so did I. The birthday money I spent on bills instead of her party. That $800 that started all of this. I used to feel guilty about it, like I'd somehow failed her. I don't feel guilty anymore. That money kept my lights on. It kept food in my fridge. It kept me stable enough to be there when she finally needed me. Sometimes taking care of yourself first is the only way you can take care of anyone else. Whitney understands that now. She learned the hard way, but she learned. Last week she called me on her lunch break just to talk. No crisis, no drama, just a daughter calling her mother because she wanted to. We talked about nothing in particular. Her job, my job, a show we both started watching. Regular stuff. Right before she hung up, she said something that made me smile. "Hey, Mom, I love you. I love you too, sweetheart. Thanks for not giving up on me." "Never." She laughed softly. "Same time tomorrow?" "Same time tomorrow. That's our thing now. Daily calls, just to check in, just to connect, just to remind each other that we're still here." After everything we've been through, the college fund, the birthday money, the abuse, the stalking, the fear, we're still here, and we're stronger than ever. Final update. I know I said the last update was the final one, but something happened yesterday that I need to share. Brett died in prison. Doreen called me at 7 in the morning. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. He's gone, she kept saying. My boy's gone. I didn't know how to feel. Still don't really. Brett hurt my daughter. He nearly destroyed her. He spent years tormenting us even from behind bars through his cousin and his network of friends. But he was also someone's son. Doreen lost her child yesterday. No matter what he did, that's still a tragedy. The details are still unclear. Prison fight, apparently. Wrong person at the wrong time. Nobody's been charged yet. I told Whitney last night over dinner. She got very quiet. How do you feel? I asked. I don't know. She stirred her pasta without eating it. Relieved, maybe? But also sad. Is that weird? No, that's human. She looked at me. He wasn't always a monster, you know. When we first started dating, he was kind, generous. He made me laugh. That's why I fell for him. I know. Sometimes I wonder what happened to him. What made him the way he was? We may never know. She nodded slowly. I thought I'd feel free when he was gone, like a weight lifting, but I just feel empty. That's trauma, I said. It doesn't resolve itself just because the source is gone. You still have to process it. Will that ever end? Eventually. She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much. But not today. No, not today. We finished dinner in silence. Then we watched a movie and didn't really watch it. Then she went home to her apartment and I went to bed. I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about Brett. About the young man he might have been before whatever broke inside him. About the choices that led him to prison, to violence, to death. I'm not glad he's dead, but I'm glad he can't hurt Whitney anymore. This morning I called Doreen, offered my condolences. She thanked me through tears. I know he hurt your girl, she said. I know he was a bad person, but he was still my son. I understand. Do you? Do you really? I thought about Whitney, about how I would feel if I lost her, about the lengths I went to save her. Yes, I said. I really do. Doreen was quiet for a long moment. You're a good mother, Linda. So were you. You tried your best with him. She started crying again. I'll never know if that's true. We said goodbye. I don't expect to hear from her again. Tonight Whitney is coming over for dinner. We're going to cook together like we used to when she was young. Pasta with garlic bread. Her favorite. She texted me an hour ago. Looking forward to tonight. I think I'm ready to talk about what happened. Really talk. If you're ready to listen. I texted back immediately. I'm always ready to listen. And I am. Because that's what mothers do. They listen. They wait. They never give up. No matter how long it takes. No matter how hard it gets. They stay. And they love until the end. Part 2. The aftermath. 3 weeks after Brett's death, everything changed again. I was at work when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Arizona area code. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Is this Linda? Whitney's mother? The voice was official. Clipped. Someone who made calls like this for a living. Yes. Who is this? This is Detective Navarro with the Phoenix Police Department. I'm following up on an open investigation regarding Brett Holloway. My stomach dropped. What investigation? The detective paused. Ma'am, are you aware that Mr. Holloway was involved in several ongoing criminal matters at the time of his death? I knew about the restraining order violations, the intimidation charges. There's more. Detective Navarro's voice was careful. During our investigation into his prison death, we discovered evidence of a larger network. Mr. Holloway was connected to individuals who are now persons of interest in multiple cases. What does this have to do with me? Your daughter's name came up in some of the evidence we recovered from his cell. Letters, photographs, plans. Plans for what? We'd rather discuss this in person. Is there a time you and your daughter could come to Phoenix? We'll cover your travel expenses. I sat at my desk, staring at nothing. This wasn't over. Of course it wasn't over. Nothing with Brett was ever simple. We flew to Phoenix 2 days later. Whitney was terrified, but she refused to let me go alone. If this is about me, I need to be there, she said. I need to know what he was planning. The Phoenix police station was colder than I expected. Industrial air conditioning blasting through fluorescent-lit hallways. Detective Navarro met us in a conference room with manila folders stacked 3 inches high. Thank you for coming, he said. I know this isn't easy. He opened the first folder and pulled out a stack of photographs. Some were of Whitney. Recent ones. From her Instagram. From her walks to class. From her coffee shop job. Where did these come from? Whitney whispered. Brett's cell. He had someone on the outside taking these and mailing them to him. Whitney's hands were shaking. She gripped the edge of the table. So he knew where I was. The whole time. Yes. Detective Navarro's face was grim. But that's not the worst of it. He opened a second folder. This one contained handwritten letters. Pages and pages of Brett's cramped handwriting. These are correspondence between Brett and his cousin Maddox. The detective spread the letters across the table. They were planning to abduct your daughter upon Brett's release. Abduct me? The plan was detailed. Dates, locations, routes you took regularly. They'd been studying your patterns for months. I felt sick. All those times, Whitney felt watched. The cars driving slowly past. The unfamiliar faces. It wasn't paranoia. It was reconnaissance. Detective Navarro pulled out one more document. This one was a diagram. A floor plan of Whitney's apartment. They had this too. Brett's voice went flat, with entry points marked. And a timeline. How did they get this? Whitney's voice cracked. How did they know where I lived? We're still investigating. But we believe someone in your building was providing information. Someone I know? Possibly a maintenance worker. Maybe a neighbor. Someone with access to the building. Whitney stood up so fast her chair fell backward. I have to move. I have to get out of there. That's actually why we asked you to come, Detective Navarro said. We want to offer you protection. Relocation assistance. Until we can apprehend the remaining individuals involved in this network. Remaining individuals? I felt the room spinning. How many people are we talking about? Brett was connected to at least a dozen men with similar tendencies. Detective Navarro chose his words carefully. They communicated through encrypted channels, shared information about targets. My daughter was a target. Whitney sat back down. Her face was white. So this wasn't just Brett. This was… what? A group? We're calling it a network. The detective leaned forward. These men find vulnerable women and share strategies for control and isolation. Brett was one of the more active members. I thought about all the conversations Whitney had described. How Brett seemed to know exactly what to say to make her doubt herself. How his tactics were almost too perfect. Too practiced. He learned this, I said. From other people. Yes. Detective Navarro nodded. And now those people are still out there. And some of them know who Whitney is. The next 3 hours were a blur of paperwork and photographs. They showed us pictures of men in Brett's network. Some Whitney recognized. Others she didn't. Maddox was one of them. Brett's cousin. The one Crystal had warned us about. He's currently our primary concern, Detective Navarro said. He disappeared after Brett's death. We believe he's already in your state. What? We tracked his phone to within 50 miles of your town. Then he went dark. New phone, new car. We lost him. Whitney grabbed my hand. Her fingers were ice cold. So he could be anywhere. Yes. That's why we're offering relocation. New identities, new city, fresh start. Whitney looked at me. I looked at her. Everything we'd built over the past year. Her job, her apartment, her community college credits, my house, my friends, my life. All of it would have to go. Can we have some time to think about it? I asked. Of course. But I wouldn't wait too long. Detective Navarro's face was serious. These men don't give up easily. We flew home that night in silence. Whitney stared out the airplane window at nothing. I held her hand across the armrest. When we landed, she finally spoke. I'm not running. Whitney. No. She turned to face me. Her eyes were hard. I spent 2 years being controlled by Brett. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life being controlled by the fear of people like him. But Maddox. I'll get a gun. I'll take self-defense classes. I'll install more cameras. But I'm not leaving. She squeezed my hand. This is my home. I'm not letting them take that from me too. I wanted to argue. To tell her that her safety was more important than any sense of home. But I looked at her face and saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Fire. The broken girl who had crawled home from Arizona was gone. In her place was a woman who had survived the worst and decided to fight back. Okay, I said. We stay. But we do this smart. The next week was all preparation. We worked with the Phoenix police to set up a tip line. Anyone with information about Maddox could call anonymously. Whitney got her gun license. Took 3 days of intensive training. Bought a Glock 19 that she kept in her bedside table. I hated having a gun in the house. But I hated the idea of her being defenseless more. We installed more cameras, motion sensors, a panic button that connected directly to 911. We joined a neighborhood watch group that patrolled our street every night. And we waited. Maddox didn't show up for 2 weeks. Then 3. The police thought maybe he'd moved on. Found a different target. Given up. They were wrong. I was at work on a Tuesday afternoon when my phone rang. Whitney's number. Mom. Her voice was strange. Calm but tight. There's someone in my apartment building. Where are you? Locked in my bathroom. I saw him in the hallway when I came home from work. He pretended to be checking the fire extinguisher, but I recognized him from the photos. Maddox? I think so. I was already running to my car. I'm calling 911. Don't move. Don't open the door. I know what to do, Mom. I have my gun. I have my phone. I'm okay. I drove 90 miles an hour with 911 on speakerphone. The dispatcher kept me updated. Police were 4 minutes away. Then 3. Then 2. I heard sirens through the phone. Whitney's breathing. They're here, she whispered. I hear them in the hallway. More noise. Shouting. The sound of a door being kicked in somewhere. Then Whitney screaming. Not him. The other one. There's another one. The line went dead. I don't remember the rest of the drive. I don't remember parking. I don't remember running up 3 flights of stairs. I remember the police tape across Whitney's hallway. I remember pushing past an officer who tried to stop me. I remember seeing blood on the floor and feeling my heart stop. Then I saw Whitney. She was sitting on her couch wrapped in a shock blanket. A paramedic was checking her over. She had a cut on her forehead and bruises forming on her arms, but she was alive. Mom. She ran to me and we collided in the middle of her living room. I held her so tight I thought my arms might break. What happened? I kept saying. What happened? What happened? What happened? The story came out in pieces over the next hour. Maddox had been a distraction. While he pretended to check fire extinguishers, another man from Brett's network was breaking into Whitney's apartment through the bathroom window. Whitney heard the glass shatter and grabbed her gun. When the man came through the window, she was waiting. She shot him. Not fatally. The bullet hit his shoulder and he dropped. He was in handcuffs and heading to the hospital before I even arrived. Maddox tried to run when he heard the shot. The police caught him in the stairwell. 2 arrests. 1 injured suspect. 0 harm to my daughter. She saved herself. The trial was 8 months later. Both men were charged with attempted kidnapping, breaking and entering, stalking, and conspiracy. Whitney testified for 3 hours. She told her whole story from the beginning. The college fund, the abuse, the escape, the death threats, the network. The jury was out for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Maddox got 15 years. The other man got 12. After the verdict, Whitney stood on the courthouse steps and gave a statement to the press. She hadn't wanted the attention, but the detective convinced her it might help other women in similar situations. "I survived because I refused to be a victim," she said. "I survived because I took control of my own safety. And I survived because my mother never gave up on me." She looked directly at the camera. If you're out there and someone is controlling you, hurting you, making you feel worthless, know that it's not true. You have value. You have strength. You have people who love you. And you can get out. It's hard. It's terrifying. But it's possible. I'm living proof. That clip went viral. 3 million views in the first week. Whitney started getting messages from women all over the country. Some just wanted to thank her. Others wanted advice. A few were in situations exactly like hers and didn't know how to escape. She responded to every single one. 6 months after the trial, Whitney quit her marketing job. She started a nonprofit called Second Chances that helps domestic abuse survivors rebuild their lives. "I didn't plan this," she told me, "but I think maybe this is what I was supposed to do all along." The organization now has offices in 3 states. They've helped over 200 women escape abusive situations. They provide housing assistance, job training, legal help, and counseling. The $47,000 Whitney lost to Brett. We turned that loss into something meaningful. Last month, Whitney was invited to speak at a national conference on domestic violence. She flew to Washington, D.C., and addressed a room of 500 advocates, lawmakers, and survivors. I watched the speech on livestream from my living room, cried through the whole thing. "My mother spent $800 on bills instead of throwing me a birthday party," Whitney said. "At the time, I called her selfish. I told her she was a terrible mother. But that $800 kept her stable enough to be there when I finally needed help. Sometimes taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary." She paused and looked directly at the camera. "To all the mothers out there dealing with children who are caught in abusive relationships, don't give up. Keep your door open. Keep your phone charged. Keep yourself healthy and stable. Because when your child finally decides to leave, they're going to need somewhere to go. Be that somewhere." After the speech, she called me from her hotel room. "Did you watch?" "Of course I watched. What did you think?" "I think I'm the proudest mother in the entire world." She laughed. A real laugh. The kind I hadn't heard from her in years. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "Yes, you could." I smiled even though she couldn't see it. "You just didn't know it yet." That was 3 weeks ago. Tonight, Whitney is coming over for our weekly dinner. She's bringing her boyfriend. His name is Theo. He's a social worker at one of her organization's partner agencies. I've met him twice. He seems kind, patient, respectful, nothing like Brett. Whitney called me yesterday to give me the usual boyfriend meeting warnings. Don't ask him about his intentions. Don't show him my baby photos. Don't tell him about the time I peed my pants at summer camp. "I'll try my best," I said, but no promises on the baby photos. She groaned. "Mom." I laughed. "See you tomorrow, sweetheart. See you tomorrow." It's funny. A year ago, I thought I'd lost my daughter forever. I thought she'd disappear into Arizona with a monster, and I'd never see her again. Now she's running a nonprofit, speaking at national conferences, saving other women's lives, dating a nice man who treats her well. The college fund is gone, but Whitney doesn't need it anymore. She's already more educated than any classroom could make her. The birthday money that started all of this, that $800 I spent on bills instead of her party, I don't regret it. If I had thrown that party, if I had pretended everything was fine and smiled through another meal while my daughter defended her abuser, maybe she would have stayed with Brett longer. Maybe she would have never left Arizona. Maybe I would have lost her completely. Sometimes the hardest decisions are the right ones. Sometimes saying no is the most loving thing you can do. Sometimes a mother has to let her child hit rock bottom before she can start climbing back up. I know that now. Whitney knows it too. The doorbell just rang. That's them. Time to meet the boyfriend. Time to keep building this new life we've created. Time to be thankful for another day with my daughter. Another day neither of us ever expected to have. Epilogue. 1 year later. Today is Whitney's 25th birthday. We're having a party at Romano's, the same restaurant I was supposed to take her to 3 years ago before everything fell apart. The reservation is for 15 people. Whitney's friends from work, her boyfriend Theo, who is now her fiancé, Marlena and her husband, Crystal, who flew in from Phoenix, Detective Navarro and his wife, and me. I'm sitting in the restaurant waiting for everyone to arrive. The manager just brought me a glass of champagne on the house because I told him what we were celebrating. Not just a birthday, I said. A life. He didn't understand. How could he? But I understand. 3 years ago, my daughter came home and told me she'd given $47,000 to a man who would nearly destroy her. 3 years ago, I spent her birthday money on bills because I had no other choice. 3 years ago, I watched her drive away with a monster and thought I might never see her again. Now she's walking through the restaurant door in a blue dress that matches her eyes. Theo is beside her holding her hand. Her friends are behind them laughing and talking. She sees me and her face lights up. Mom. She runs to me like she's 5 years old again. Throws her arms around me and squeezes. Happy birthday, sweetheart. Thank you for this. She pulls back and looks at the decorated table. The balloons. The cake waiting in the back. This is perfect. You deserve it. I touch her face. You deserve everything. The party lasts 3 hours. There's too much food and too much wine and way too many speeches. Theo talks about how Whitney inspired him to be a better person. Crystal tells the story of that first phone call she made to me from the Phoenix Diner. Detective Navarro says Whitney is the bravest witness he's ever worked with. When it's my turn, I keep it simple. I stand up and look at my daughter. This beautiful woman who survived the worst and came out stronger. 25 years ago, I held you for the first time. I say, you were so small, so helpless, so dependent on me for everything. I take a breath. Now look at you. You're strong. You're independent. You're changing the world one survivor at a time. I'm not the one taking care of you anymore. You're taking care of others. Whitney's eyes are wet. But I want you to know. I continue. No matter how strong you get, no matter how many people you help, no matter how far you go, I will always be here. My door will always be open. My phone will always be charged. I raise my glass. To Whitney. My daughter. My hero. Happy birthday. Everyone cheers. Whitney hugs me again. I love you, Mom. I love you too. After the party, Whitney and I sit in my car in the parking lot. Everyone else has gone home. We're not ready to leave yet. Remember what you told me when I came back from Arizona, she says. That the Mira I thought I knew didn't exist? I remember. She looks at me. You were right. But so was the opposite. The Whitney you thought you lost didn't exist either. She was always there, just buried under all his lies. I know that now. She takes my hand. Thank you for digging me out. We sit in silence for a while, watching the last customers leave the restaurant, watching the staff clean up, watching the lights go out one by one. What are you thinking about? Whitney asks. The birthday money. She laughs softly. Of course you are. I spent $800 on bills instead of your party. And somehow that decision led us here. To this night. To everything you've become. Funny how that works. Not funny. Miraculous. Whitney squeezes my hand. You know what I think? She says. I think that $800 was the best money you ever spent. I look at her. Really? Really? It kept you stable. It kept you ready. And when I finally called you from that Phoenix Diner, you were able to drop everything and fly across the country to save me. I didn't save you. You saved yourself. We saved each other. She's right. I spent my daughter's birthday money on myself to pay bills, and it was the best decision I ever made.